Welcome to Book Banter with me, your host, Dianne Burkhart. I hope you will join me every Wednesday as we explore all things to do with, well, books. Let's get on with our show today. Hello, my happy people. I hope you are having a wonderful week. So today is not April 12th for me. It is for you, but for me it is actually the 3rd of April. Because my husband and I are going to be going away to Italy over the Easter holiday. So I'm working ahead a few weeks to try and get everything taken care of and ready to post on its own while we're on vacation the first week we get back. So I'm not going to be rushing and driving myself crazy whenever we get home. So I had the interview with cozy mystery author Stephanie LaVigne all ready to go. But when I was doing the editing, we really talked a long time and I had so much good information. I started to cut it down so I could get it into just the episode today. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to break it up into 2 episodes. And I know typically people do not listen to the second episode and whenever I cut them up as much as they listen to the first. But trust me, you want to listen to both parts of this because our conversation together was just so much fun and there was so much information that I got from her just about how she began her writing career, how she's transitioning to a different genre, which I know many indie authors have done. As a matter of fact, I'm doing that right now. I was writing as Stephen Burkhart in historical fiction Western genre, and now I'm moving to Dianne Burkhart, which is my actual name, and writing a thriller. So it really takes a lot of effort once you've established yourself under a pen name and then moving into a different genre under a different name. And we talk about all of that. And it was just so much fun. She is so funny. She has so much information. And I just didn't want you to miss out on any of it. And I have to admit, at times we do seem to become really random and go off track, but we always end up bringing it back around to our writing process and the genres that we're working in and why these odd little bits of information that we put in our stories are actually important. I think anyone who is an indie author is going to find a lot of helpful information in this interview. And even for readers, you're going to be fascinated by all of the information about what it actually takes for people to get a book published. It's really not as easy as people make it seem. If you want to get any kind of recognition, if you want to get a following, if you actually want to make money at it, there are so many factors that you have to take into consideration if you want to do this and do it well. It's really easy to do it. I mean, I will give everybody that. It is easy to do it. It is not easy to do it well, to get a following, to actually grow your audience, to make a career out of this. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort. You have to know how to focus to your genre and your audience. And Stephanie has some fantastic ideas about how she went through this process. And I know anybody out there who is an indie author is going to find this useful. Anybody who is an avid reader is going to find it fascinating what people go through to bring you the books that you're reading. So the first part today is actually talking about how Stephanie got her career going, how she came to be an author, and then next week, we get more into what she's actually working on now, her cozy mystery series that's coming out, and I have gotten to read the first one that does not actually come out until next year, and I can tell you, it will be worth the wait. It is everything you want a cozy mystery to be. And just listening to Stephanie, you're going to understand the kind of humor that she has, the kind of information and experiences that she has to draw on for her stories. She is just absolutely fascinating. You're going to love her. So without any further blather from me, let's bring to the show cozy mystery author Stephanie LaVigne. My guest today is somebody that I have been bugging her publicist for a while now to get her on my show because I'm just so excited. I love cozy mysteries. So of course I've been dying to get a cozy mystery author on my show. And her Linktree lists that she is not only a fiction author, but a speaker, an everyday adventurer, and a pep talker. Who wouldn't want to talk to somebody like that? We have today Stephanie LaVigne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Dianne. I am so excited to be here.
I was noticing on a couple of your About the Author things that your everyday adventurer is no joke. You are indeed an adventurer. And I have to ask, how do you unwittingly climb a mountain?
You know, one step at a time. It's probably like that eat the elephant thing. Yes, when you're not a mountain climber or you are from a flat state like Florida, you just start walking thinking, how hard can this be? I actually lived in Massachusetts when I originally left Florida for college, and everyone would talk about hiking all the time. I remember just asking people, like, isn't hiking just walking? You guys are saying walking, right? Like you're walking up a hill or a mountain, but you're just walking. It's not a sport. And I'm like, okay. But yes, years later, when I was an adult, I was on a big trip from Florida up and through Canada and all around. And we stopped in New Hampshire because I have family in Maine we were going to visit. And there was a mountain. I thought that would be fun. And we started on the path. Oh my gosh, you get probably a third of the way up. You can't tell because it's a mountain. And suddenly I am just in pain and my legs hurt. But you can't go back down. You know, there's only one way. At that point, you're like, it is just as bad to turn around as it is to ascend to the top. And by the time I got to the top, I saw that summiting sign and I rushed over. Like we took one of those pictures. Mm-hmm. I was so proud. And then you would see grandparents driving up with their little grandchildren coming out next to the sign. And it was like, no, I just climbed this mountain. You could drive. But it was a great experience. A good metaphor for how I've done things in life where I like to jump into things sometimes. And there comes a point where you go, oh, this is impossible, or at least very improbable that this makes any sense at all. But at that point, I'm so deep in that I have to sit down and pep talk myself. I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do now? And I guess you're going to keep going forward. I mean, because I guess I don't like to go back or quit. I'm fine quitting. Quitting is fine. I don't, people should quit things that aren't right for them. But True. A lot of times with especially those crazy, anything that's ridiculous, that's the thing that my brain says, yes, we should definitely keep going. And so now I'm a mountain climber, my one mountain.
But you're also a sailor. That one really surprised me. I mean, I know that you did underwater photography, but I didn't realize you were a sailor.
Sailor-ish. I would like anyone who is a sailor, please do not come back and and call me out, because I have had sailing skills. I have sailed, and now I would not be very good at it. And when I did cross the Atlantic, I was about 13. And so I was not the main sailor. I was very, very fortunate to be a crew member. So I'm not a sailing prodigy. I love sailing. I put my kids in sailing camp. I want to be sailing, but it is not necessarily the skill set that I can tout as something I do.
Wow. So your transatlantic sailing trip was at 13?
Yes, because my aunt and uncle lived on a boat and they were moving from the Caribbean to Spain and they needed some help.
Wow.
With my little cousin and a crew member. And we lost one crew member in Bermuda. We didn't lose him to the Bermuda Triangle. We just lost him. Although I'm sure that would make an interesting story. Maybe you or I could use it someday. But for the big transatlantic crossing, it ended up just being technically the four of us, but it was an amazing experience.
How long did that trip take?
I need to figure that out, because I always think that I feel like there was 2 weeks from probably Bermuda to the Azores. So that's just no land whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It may have been 2.5, but somewhere roughly 2 weeks, I would say, from the Bermuda to the Azores. So the whole trip from where we were in the Caribbean to Spain took longer, but I always consider that the transatlantic portion where there is nothing but big waves and the occasional freighter.
Wow, that is incredible. It has to be a great memory for you.
Yeah, it was a fantastic memory for me, and I was probably not the ideal crew member for my awesome aunt and uncle, because, you're 13. But it was amazing, and I always do think so many things like that really shape you as a kid. And I'm also terrified of being accidentally eaten by a shark from that trip, because my uncle gave me a shark attack picture book of real shark attacks, and thinking that was funny, I guess. I don't know. But it definitely scarred me. I respect them. I like sharks. I just think they may accidentally eat me at any given time. Though I do go in the ocean, but I'm just scared in the back of my head.
Oh, I understand because Jaws came out really big when I was little, and my mother took me to go see that movie the day before I had to jump in the deep end of the swimming pool at swim lessons.
Oh, not nice.
And they had to throw me in. I mean, my little 8-year-old
Oh
brain
no.
had it figured out because Saturday Night Live had turned that into Land Shark. So my little
Oh,
8-year-old brain had decided that there could be a shark in the pool. And you have never
you
seen an
never know.
8-year-old swim so fast to the side of the pool in your life.
Oh my gosh. There was also a movie called One Crazy Summer. I think it was in the 80s, and they had a rabid dolphin. And it was actually a spoof, I believe, off of the Jaws movies, those summer movies. Mm-hmm. And when the first time and only time actually I swam in the Gulf of Mexico off of Mississippi, and it was a bit yucky. It was just a little stop on a trip I was on, and my friends had never been in warm water. So we ran down to the ocean. It was black and oil slicked and disgusting and terrifying, but we went in anyway. And at some point, a dolphin went over a wave next to me, which would normally be magical. But in my head, I thought, rabid dolphin. I think I screamed shark. And then I also swam faster. I was like, get out of the water. Or I might have thought shark and screamed dolphin. I don't remember what it was, but in my head, it was the rabid dolphin / shark. And I had to get out immediately. And I also swam faster than I've ever swam in my life. And I was a swimmer in high school, and I think that was probably my crowning swim ever away from that rabid dolphin.
So you have had some quite interesting adventures in your life.
I try. I feel like not as many lately, but every day is an adventure if you go about it right.
Well, that's true. That's true. If you live right.
I try. Yeah.
I know you were a underwater photographer at one point. How do you transfer from that to becoming a cozy mystery author?
Well, the irony was, I worked in the film and television industry first, and that was in New York City for quite a long time. And I did some soul searching. I knew it was time to make a change because I was working more on the production end than I was on the creative end. I wasn't doing the work in film that I wanted to be doing, and I worked really long hours. I loved what I did. It was really fun, but I knew I needed a change. I knew I wanted more life quality, and I had started coming back to Florida to see my parents, and suddenly the place I left at 18, that was the worst place ever, was very beautiful and tropical and very inviting. And so I sat down, I did all this soul searching. What should I do next? Where do I move? What do I do? And I knew at that time that I should be a writer. And I sat down and I bought a book at Barnes & Noble. It was a NaNoWriMo book that in the early days, no plot, no problem or something like that. And I wrote a book. And then immediately after, I decided that I was going to become an author because that's what I should do. And again, let me caveat this with, these were the days where self-publishing really wasn't a thing. So as I'm reading, they're saying you're going to just send your book and then it's going to be rejected a million times. And then one day, maybe someone will pay you a tiny bit of money. And I thought, oh, well, that's not great. How am I going to afford to live, to do things? I'm an adult, even though I was a young adult, but still. And so I became a photographer because I had access to some photo equipment and I'd never been a photographer. And I thought, oh, I do water stuff. There was one woman who was doing underwater portrait photography in the UK. And I thought, oh, that's cool. No one's doing that here. I'll do that. And so I started specializing in underwater portrait photography and architectural interiors because I am a house nerd and I really like houses and I love interiors, and also my family, there's construction. So I had original access to a lot of interior designers who needed photography. And so I ended up saying, I'm going to be a writer. Just kidding. Why don't I start a underwater portrait photography and architectural interior photography company for the next million years.
So how did you actually get into being an author?
So I'd had these two careers and I had always been creative. I'd always been writing. I think most authors say that, you're always doing some version of storytelling. Even when I worked in film and wanted to be in film, it's all a variation of a theme, and even photography is. But I had always known I should write and I wanted to write and I was always doing some version of writing, but I kept doing other things. So basically I got to a point where I realized you need to start doing what you want to do, because I was good at photography and I enjoyed it, but I always knew it wasn't my passion. I always knew it wasn't the thing I was meant to do. I think a lot of quote unquote creative people, you can pick up a lot of different jobs and do them well, but I didn't love it. And it got to the point where I was burnt out because I knew it wasn't right. Like there was the stress of it just wasn't right. It wasn't the right fit. And I had amazing clients and people loved me and I loved all of them, but I just knew it wasn't right. And one day I just made myself stop. And it was actually a painfully long transition, but I just knew it was time to start writing and figuring that out. And then luckily, a friend of mine and I we brought ourselves on a little writer's retreat to the Florida Keys. And I had been hearing about self-publishing because I'm a big business entrepreneurial nerd. I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books, and I like a lot of nonfiction stuff. And self-publishing was starting to become this thing I'm hearing about a little bit more. And I told her, I have this idea. It's going to sound crazy, but like, what if we tried to do this? And then we just went full bore. And from that point forward, we were both just working on really learning to market books and obviously creating books. But I had learned in my other careers that it wasn't necessarily about being the most talented person. The people who knew how to do the business were the people who were often the most successful. So I knew that I could do the creative part, which of course you want to continue growing and learning the creative part and the craft and stuff, and you'll always get better and grow. But I knew that I needed to focus on learning the business, which was now totally available. I didn't have to go through a gatekeeper anymore. I didn't have to go find a publisher and get a literary agent for me to start building a business. And I like building businesses, or I like that part. It's fun for me. So I got to just really throw myself into that. And then I had a career.
And now you're actually an international best-selling author with more than 50 titles under your name and different pen names. I mean, you've done an amazing job building this career.
It's been fun. And it still, of course, has its ups and downs because I thought I knew so much. And then I switched genres and I realized now I'm a tiny baby again and I'm starting over. So there's a lot of, I guess, milestones and starts and stops. So it's always a learning experience, but it's been cool to achieve some of the things and be able to say, oh, I've done that. So yeah, I've enjoyed it.
What do you think is one of the best secrets about getting your books out there in front of the right market and being able to bring something to a bestsellers list?
Ooh, there's so many parts of it. And these days, I think the thing I'm realizing more and more, especially because we have too many options almost, which is great, but also can be overwhelming. Just finding an avenue, getting it out there. So many people do it in different ways. And I think for the last several years, we all felt like we had to do everything. We had to do all of the social media and we had to use every strategy and tactic. And I think that's not necessarily working now. There's a lot more people, especially post-pandemic, coming into the field because it's a lot more doable. So it changes because now I feel like it's more about being a person and maybe just finding your audience. There's definitely been times where it's been about putting out as many books as possible, as close together with sort of release strategies and things like that. And there's been times where advertising, there's so many different ways to go about it. And I think that if you can find whatever's your strength, mine's changed and I think will continue to change, and you have to keep changing to stay on top of things. But also I think personality is a little bit of it that I'm excited to do now a little bit more, because before I was always under pen names. And now I get to come talk to people like you, and that's a lot of fun.
That was one of the reasons why I started coming out as Dianne Burkhart, because everything I had been doing was under pen name. And whenever people want to interview you, but you write as Stephen Burkhart.
It's very hard. I used to say it's so hard to be a fake person. It's so freeing, but then there's a limit. It feels like there's a cap to it. Where you're like, ooh.
And plus, it's like, I know I have a deep voice for a woman, but I don't sound like a man. So it makes it very hard to do those interviews.
Yeah, I used to also, I'd try and put a picture on some of my pen names. I'm like, what about me from behind? Or when I had this hair color, or I had a cartoon drawing once done as a logo. I thought, ooh, no, that was not cute.
Well, you know what's really funny? My pen names, the author photos that I have for them, it's my dad when he was my age and my mom when she was my age.
I love that so much. That's so cute.
Yeah. And you can tell which ones are my pen names because the photos are black and white and my photo is in color.
I'm feeling very heartwarmed right now.
See, in that way, I keep my parents kind of involved
Yeah.
in everything. My dad has absolutely adored being the face for Stephen Burkhardt. He tells people that he writes the books and he refuses to do interviews for me, though.
I love that. I always try and make names, and I've continuously tried to make a pen name or my name to kind of reflect like my mom, or like I have two dads, and just, it never really quite works. But I love honoring and like roping those people in that mean so much to you.
Well, and it worked out perfect too, because what I did was I took my maiden last name, Stevens, and dropped the last
Oh,
S, and then used my married last name, Burkhardt, to create Stephen Burkhardt. But my dad's name is Steve. So,
oh my
it
gosh.
works out perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah. I always envy everyone with these perfect book cover worthy names. Looks so nice on a cover. That was one of my favorite things when I first started doing pen names. I said, oh, no wonder. And when I first learned that so many authors used pen names, like once I became an author and I started knowing a lot of other authors, I'm like, wait a second. No wonder they all have the best names ever that fit perfectly on a book. They're not real. Oh,
Yeah, just create what you want.
yeah. My parents were not thinking ahead when they named me. It was a very long name.
You had mentioned that there are so many books on the market right now, especially with the availability for all the different platforms to do your own indie publishing. Do you think that that is actually a good thing for the publishing industry overall, or could it be detrimental?
I think that's a huge conversation that we're having now, and we're going to continue to have in the author community and the publishing community. And I go to a conference every year of professional writers, and I have a feeling that's going to be a topic this year in the fall. It's probably both. You know, we've always had these periods of time. I think when self-publishing came onto the scene, that was probably threatening to traditional publishing, but we've seen that it didn't have to be. You know, it's actually opened up the market, and we have so many opportunities. But then, of course, these big waves come in, and it's tricky because I do believe, like, if people want to do something, they should pursue it no matter what. Like, you should find a way to do work that you love. So I never would want someone not to do that because they think a market is too saturated, because there is room for every voice. And people who read, especially certain kinds of, I want to say genre fiction, but I do love fiction, but I consume a ton of what I'd call nonfiction books. And I often read and or listen to dozens of books that are just a nuanced difference of the same theme. And I am happy with that because I just want that takeaway. They're useful to me. So, you know, there's always room for lots of voices. It is tricky sometimes, I think, when a lot of people come in, because I don't want to take away from business owners. I don't want to take away from people who might just do it because they want to produce books and it's a business. You know, everyone has a right to earn a living and find a way to do that, but it becomes more challenging to find ways to market. And we're always having to find new ways to get out in front and be like, hey, buy this book instead of this book. And so the more saturated it is, the more difficult that is. But, you know, but one of my friends, we also try and remember it's not easy. You know, even when I was a photographer, if I had loved it, I would have kept going. I know a lot of photographers. So if you get to a point where it's not right for you, people will fall off because it takes so much work. You know, the marketing, the writing, there's so much that goes into any job you have, especially when you're your own boss or you've created the business. So if you love it, I think the longevity, if you stick with something long enough, then you eventually will find success. So stick with itness. But yeah, but it is tricky sometimes. Sometimes they go, oh gosh, there's so many new people that I know are not real people. And, you know, they're just pumping out books. But then just say, you know what? It's a great big world. We'll figure it out and we'll make our way through.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see just how things have changed in like the last 5 or 6 years that I've been doing. Because I started in like 2015 with the first book. And just the changes that have happened in the platforms and what's available. I mean, it's just like it's exploded the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic. I think so many people were at home and had nothing else to do. It's like, oh, I'll write a book.
I completely agree because it's been interesting to watch. Like from that 2015, you know, there was a massive amounts of changes between that period of time. And I think people always say like 2012, there was like a little gold rush. I don't know. There was this really beautiful period that I was not yet self-publishing. And then, you know, this period where I think you and I both were, and then pandemic. And so now it's this sort of new wave, and it is very interesting to see.
You had mentioned that you go to a writers' conference in the fall?
Yeah, NINC, Novelists Inc., which lovingly is located in Florida most years, so I can go.
A lot of people get really nervous going in and doing like meet and greets and author signings and things like that. What do you think about those interactions with the public? Do you enjoy them?
So NINC is only for professional writers. We don't have readers there. You don't have fans there. It's actually really cool. You'll be standing in the lobby hanging out and talking to someone, and then you realize, oh my gosh, that's this author that you start kind of innerly fangirling, but then you're also peers, so it's cool. Last year we did, it was like a karaoke night or something. And when I went back to the hotel room, somehow I saw there was pictures we were all in. And one of the people I'd been talking to, Trisha O'Malley, and I was like, wait, that's who that was. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't know that. But I was like, that's so cool. So that's really fun. And that's really where we have a lot of these conversations, where we're not networking, we're, sharing and educating and doing workshops and having roundtables. And so that one is that. I have gone to BoucherCon once, which is a mystery writers one, which was very, very cool. I went as a writer, but I really went to watch. And so I don't have a ton of experience going to these yet because it hasn't been what I've done, but I will let you know. I like interacting with people, generally speaking.
So you seem like you have a very outgoing personality. So I would figure that these would be things that you would enjoy.
Yes. I always say I'm one of those people who I love alone time and I love quiet, but the second I'm in a group, I'm like, hello, I'm social and outgoing. So I can spend lots of time by myself, but I do love people and being around and having interesting conversations and meeting different people. So
see, I always refer to that as being like an extroverted introvert, that you can be at home and be perfectly happy, but if somebody drags your behind out into the public, you can be happy and have fun there too.
Yeah. And sometimes I actually have to safeguard myself or my time now because I'll say I can't go or don't make me go because I don't want to go, because the second I'm there, I will not leave. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm fine here in my little hovel. So just leave me here because I can't be responsible for cutting myself off or transitioning out of it once I'm in a social scene. Over the last 2 years, I've done this thing called Clifton Strengths and this Gallup training. And I have not been trained, but you do this test and it's basically a personality test. And when I first took this class for writers, this woman named Becca Syme runs it. It's very cool. You should take it because you would love it. I think it's called Write Better Faster Academy. And so she does a lot with personality tests. But I think Myers-Briggs personality was ENFP. And when I figured that out, I was mind blown. And I was, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. But I don't know if it's I think it's the most introvert extrovert. So when you said that really rang true.
Man, I took one of those personality tests a long time ago. I don't remember what it was. It's like INJ something. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the Myers-Briggs one. And I'm by no means an expert, but it's been really interesting to explore more of this, especially as a writer, because some of your quirks or your things that either push you forward or hold you back, I feel like the more you learn, you can kind of use it to your advantage or say, oh, that's why I do that. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. At least I'm not, I can work with this. I have enough information now to realize this is just who I am, and that's okay.
And this is where we're going to stop the episode today. We're going to pick it up next week where we talk to Stephanie about her current work in progress and what she has planned for the future of her Cozy Mystery series. You are going to want to hear all of this because her books are so good you will not want to miss out on them. If you love Cozy Mysteries, you're going to love her books. No question. I already have a few more great interviews lined up to do, but I think I am going to actually take a week off from doing interviews and maybe focus on my own books for one episode. I really want to tell you about my Into the West Saga serial, book 7. This is the final book in my serial, Into the West Family Ties. It's going to round out the entire Into the West Saga serial. And then I'm going to move on to finish writing The Touch, which is my FBI profiler book. So I think what I want to do is, after we finish out all of Stephanie's interview next week, I want to take the week after that. It will be April 26th. I want to take that day to do an episode on my work. And I want to do a reading from each one of those books. I mean, one episode out of this whole season where you have to hear about me and my work shouldn't be too terrible. We've got some great shows coming up, more indie authors, more traditionally published authors, and just a lot of fantastic books. So what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and don't miss a single show. Season 2 has taken off like gangbusters, and so many more fabulous guests are coming. You will not want to miss a single one, because if you like books like we do, you're going to love this podcast. Now it's that time, folks. You need to go forth and be happy.